I'm Jolene Wynn.
And Rob.
And this is the Porn Addict's Wife podcast, episode number, oh my gosh, what episode number are we on? Rob, do you know?
220...
205.
Oh, 205.
Irresponsibly Awesome. Hello, my ladies. I have my favorite podcast guest with me today. Rob came on the podcast for us today.
I came on the podcast.
Today is Sunday night, and we just fed, there's missionaries for our church, and we just fed them, and then had friends over, and my sister and her family were here, and it's 8 o'clock. We haven't even started, so many dishes.
The third round of dishes.
And Rob was like, what are you going to do? And I said, I'm going to go record my podcast. And he said,
I'll come with you.
And I think that's the first time he's volunteered in that way.
Sure.
He's always very willing to come on the podcast, but this is the first time in my memory, which isn't saying much because I don't remember a whole lot. But
it's fine.
I'm
here at the end of the day.
I'm so happy
I've arrived.
that Rob is here, and we want to talk about being irresponsibly awesome. So we're just going to give you kind of a life update and give you some background as to where this is coming from. So the phrase itself is coming. I'm going to go into the phrase later. Okay. Why don't you give us a little life update, Rob? Why are we doing this podcast?
We're still married. So that's a good life update. I think that's an important update
we are
to
still
put
married.
out there. And we love still being married.
Yes.
It's wonderful.
We do.
We have always loved each other. But I was thinking about, there was this couple podcast that was out there many years ago from a very famous person. And they gave lots of marriage advice on their podcast. Mm-hmm. In fact, like their whole point of their podcast was marriage advice. And then they got divorced.
Oh, yeah, I remember. So I never actually listened to that podcast.
Yeah,
but my sister did, and she would always talk about it. And then they got divorced, and she was like, she felt very personally betrayed.
A little
and
bit.
Rob did too.
I did too. I was like, you're sitting here giving other couples advice on how to work things out and stay together. And it was very sudden. And like no one on their podcast people knew. And it just felt a little, like a little betrayal or something. Mm-hmm.
That's how I'm going to feel, you guys, if Tim McGraw and Faith Hill ever get divorced.
Sure.
I'll feel betrayed.
It'd be so sad.
It would be.
That's not their first marriage.
I know.
Yeah.
I know.
So I think, as in most of Instagram world, there's not enough of like real understanding and talk about marriage.
I agree.
Even among the marriage advice, marriage podcasts, totally. Right? And there's a couple lies that are out there.
Yes.
That Jolene hates them.
I do.
Right?
That's like a sneak peek of the next book I write, ladies, is the lies that are ruining your marriage. So just wait for that whenever I have a minute to write that book.
And the first one is marriage is hard.
Yes.
It's a lie that you don't like because it's just
an
overgeneralization of the whole experience, and you're going in expecting something.
Again, so ladies, confirmation bias. And I've hated this even before I knew what confirmation bias was. When people would tell me when I was growing up, marriage is so hard, I hated that phrase because I couldn't wait to get married. I was so excited about falling in love and finding someone to spend the rest of my life with. And I knew there was going to be life. And I knew that it didn't mean that it was going to be a walk in the park. But I also just didn't like what that created for you in your mind. Yes, you should understand that there is going to be the 50-50, but you can look at it however you like. And if you go in saying, oh, marriage is so hard, then that's what you're going to see. So even in the times that aren't as hard, you'll still see that. You'll still end up creating it and self-sabotaging in order to create a more difficult relationship. And you will also then tell that as your story. And that is not the story I ever wanted to tell. And I still am very intentional about the way that I tell the story to myself and to others about our marriage and my marriage.
And we're not saying there's not hard times. And we
yes, I think, ladies, if you've been around, you know there have been
times.
some difficult things in our marriage, yes.
And so with that, it's just interesting, those little lies that are also on the opposite direction in like marriage advice podcast too, of like, this will fix all your marriage or different things. I don't know. Yeah. Or it's the same thing that I found with dealing with depression. There's a lot of like ways to deal with all the symptoms.
Yeah.
You know, so like when you're dealing with depression, they're like, hey, why don't you go for more walks?
Right. Start exercising. Listen to uplifting music.
You know, and surround yourself with this. And all those are treating helpful on the symptoms. They don't really go into the source of the problem.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of marriage advice that we hear from lots of people are definitely treating symptoms of marriages.
Ladies, you've heard me talk about love languages.
Love languages.
That's a symptom.
Even really solid advice of like,
and it's not that it's bad.
Go on a date once a week.
Right.
Like,
yes.
That sounds like great outside advice. Like, sure, apply that. But it's also just treating like symptoms of time and connection. And if that's not there, then that one date a week isn't going to change.
Right. You can be going on a date every single week, but if you aren't actually connecting
and communicating. And so I think looking at more of, I don't want to say the problem, but like the source
totally
of your marriage.
Yeah.
Right? And I think that's a fascinating thing that Jolene has learned and I've learned, and something that coaching and thought work really is like looking at relationships in a whole different way. Which you can go back, I'm sure you know which podcast it is, but there's certain like how to see a relationship and taking on the relationship through your thoughts and through your feelings.
Right.
And that's truly the only way that you can interact in any relationship and change the core, change the source of it, is changing your thoughts and your feelings about that relationship. Yeah. Just like marriage is hard, you go and seeing.
Right.
Marriage is hard, you go and seeing all those things.
Right.
Well, that was a tangent to
getting
to where we're headed about being irresponsibly awesome.
I know, that was a little tangent.
Let me see if I can tie that in.
I don't know that it ties in.
At the end of the day, though, like, it comes back to you and yourself. And there's certain things that only I will know in my thoughts and my feelings, even in our relationship.
Right.
And that's where you can get a relationship that is seemingly all on the same page, and then
yes,
all of a sudden,
your husband comes to you and it's like, secretly I've been addicted to
I'm
porn, and I was
like,
what?
Addicted to, or I'm leaving, or we're divorcing, and like you don't see it coming, and that's because each party is responsible for their thoughts and their feelings. You're going through the same circumstances. You're going through the same.
Who really knows where you are?
Yeah.
Yeah.
You know where you are, and that is important to get clear on where you're at.
Which most people aren't, which is why I have a job.
Yeah.
It actually takes a lot, and ladies, you guys deserve the credit for what you're doing and even listening to this podcast, because it shows a lot of self-awareness that a lot of people don't normally have. It takes a lot of humility to look at yourself with an honest answer and say, where am I? And to reflect back truthfully to yourself. Most people don't like that because of all the judgment and whatever you make it mean. And so there's a lot of resistance to that. So which is why we typically don't do it.
Yeah. It's a very difficult concept to grasp, but as you grasp it, it's very freeing to know that you can change the relationship by changing your thoughts and feelings about the relationship. And so, because at the end of the day, you're the only one that knows that. So, in kind of a tangent, I guess, kind of a segue, is being able to make decisions for yourself that no one else understands.
Right.
And that's a very unusual and difficult situation to be in, because most of the time, for me, it's taken many years to practice just the confidence to make those decisions, just the trust in myself to make those decisions.
Which is what most people lack. So I'll interject here. Most people, we kind of make decisions based on our social atmosphere. We want to gauge it based on how everybody else feels about it. And we grow up doing this, right?
We want to know. Up there on Facebook. Hey,
right. Yes, right. Well, first we start off as a kid, right? And our parents tell us, no, you should do that. No, you shouldn't. Don't touch the stove. Yes, hold my hand, right? Our parents tell us what we should and shouldn't do. So we're used to making decisions based off our parents. Then as we grow older, we start making more decisions by ourselves. I actually talk about this in my book, but we, as young adults, we start doing it more on our peers. And we make decisions based off how to fit in, right? And does this fit in or does this not fit in? Is the crowd going with it? Is the crowd not going with it? And then as we grow older, that's when we start to do it more with maybe our spouse or whomever we're in a relationship with. And it takes an even more confident and self-trusting individual to say, I'm going to do this even if nobody else does it, because our brain is very afraid of that decision. Our brain thinks that means we're going to die. We've left the herd. Everybody else is doing it one way. If we do it another way, our brain thinks that means we're dead.
And most of the time, from an outside perspective, everyone else may look at a decision and say, that's completely irresponsible.
Yeah.
That doesn't make any sense, whether it's sense emotionally, sense financially.
I have so many examples right now.
Oh, excellent.
And I think I got very good at making these kinds of decisions growing up. I grew up in an area where there were not a lot of religious kids, and I was very religious, so I stood out. I didn't drink. I didn't sleep around. I didn't make lots of decisions that other kids were making. And so the example that's coming to my mind is when I was a senior in high school, I went to states for swimming, and I qualified in several events to go into finals. And then we had this huge freak snowstorm, and so they canceled finals and they moved them onto a Sunday. Well, growing up, I never did sports on Sunday. And so this was devastating. It was my senior year. I was, part of a team, and my parents were great, and they said, well, this is totally your decision. And I was like, well, I'm going to swim because that's what I wanted to do. And I went to practice the day before, and I just felt awful about it. And I came and I talked to my coach, and he said, you know what, Jolene, there are some things that are more important than swimming. And so I decided not to swim. And on paper, does God truthfully, is that one day of the Sabbath going to be whether I get into heaven or not? Probably not, right? And most people would say on a piece of paper, it would look logically like you should swim. Why are you not swimming? This doesn't make any sense. You have a team, you have a relay that's relying on you. You made it. This is your senior year. This makes sense if you actually made this decision, right? Nobody is affected by, it hurts more if you don't go swim than if you do, right? And so that's the logical decision that everyone else told me to make, that I made the opposite. And then, so that's coming to my mind.
Yeah, and the decisions that are like that, there's definitely like I was saying, a certain confidence and self-trust, which comes from knowing yourself.
Yeah.
And being aware and taking the time to know what you think and how you feel and what you're normally prone to do or normally not prone to do, right? And I can be very much a people pleaser naturally in many situations.
Are you serious?
And so even for myself coming from that, it's hard in my brain, that's the thought I have, right? To make decisions based off of other it's easy to make decisions based off of other people and what other people think or a general consensus would think would be the right choice, the smart choice. Mm-hmm. And so to go against that and make a irresponsible decision, right?
It's very difficult for you.
It just doesn't make any sense. Why would you do that? That doesn't make any sense.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, I'm the only one and you're the only one. Now, here's the caveat, though. You have to know yourself.
Right.
Right? You can't be like, I'm done. I'm skipping out on what everyone else wants me to do. I'm just going to go do my own thing. Mm-hmm. Well, if you make that decision without knowing yourself, you may not.
You might regret that later.
Yeah. You might say, oh, I didn't realize what that decision was. And I'm not trying to speak from a higher position at all when I say that. But just as a caution of also be aware of where you're at and why you're making the decision, right? Know why you're making the decision and the reason why you're making the decision, and are you okay with those reasons? Which is what Jolene does all the time.
I know. If any of my clients are listening, this is what I say. I say, we need to know this is your choice, and you just need to know why and your reasons. So that's what we figure out.
Yeah, and sometimes those reasons are very tricky to figure out unless you're paying attention to it and looking at it. And so we have an exciting big announcement, which is what we haven't talked about for 15 minutes. And that is, Jolene is retiring me.
Yes.
Yay!
It's very exciting.
I'm so excited.
Rob's final day at work is May 22nd. And he is no longer going to be a dentist. What are you going to do, Rob? That's what everyone wants to know.
Well, what are you going to do?
What are you going to do? You're going to stop working. What are you going to do?
Nothing. Actually, I'm homeschooling my kids. That's what I'm going to do.
He's going to come home, you guys. He's going to come home and not be a dentist anymore.
All the things at home.
And let's be frank, that's kind of an irresponsible decision.
It's a bit of an irresponsible decision. And when we were making this decision, there's a number of factors in it. We included God, included some spirituality and prayer in it. But at the end of the day, when we look at our papers and all the green ones and all the bank account numbers and we say, all right, responsibly,
Rob should not.
No financial sense
stop
to not just.
Let's
just keep working. Let's just keep working. We can have the two incomes coming in. We can put money aside. We can pay down other debts. We can do different things. Like it makes financial sense. Anybody looking. If we go to a financial planner, that's what they would tell us to do.
Our accountant.
Keep your income double. Just keep making money, and. Even Jolene was feeling some cold feet about this decision, and we started talking about, well, why don't you just work 2 days a week, or let's just have you work 1 day a week? Or maybe
I was a little nervous. I was like, well, because then we lose all the benefits, and then I put this fool through dental school, and he can't even clean my kids' teeth, and I was like, what if you just worked once a month? Then you could at least clean the kids' teeth, right? And maybe get a discount on braces because we're going to have 5 kids needing braces. And
so even you guys listening, that sounds pretty...
that reason alone, a lot of people
right?
would be. Right? So it's on stupid. Paper or in a group. Or
if you poll 99 out of 99 people, they're all going to say...
Rob, you should keep working.
Just keep working, right? And even Jolene, when I polled her, she said... Well, let's just keep working maybe just a little bit. Understanding all my reasons and voicing all my thoughts and sharing all the experiences. You said, well, this is your choice.
Yeah. I said, this is your choice. This is not something that...
That's what you said.
I am going to be able to make this decision for you. Like, I'm looking at this from the outside. And even knowing everything that I know about Rob, which is almost everything, then I can still look at it and say, okay, but yeah, what if you just did once a month? And I said, ultimately, has to be something that you decide for you, and I'm not going to be able to make that for you.
So this was one of those decisions that I had to look at all my thoughts, look at all my feelings, and it was difficult, but I made the irresponsibly awesome decision to not even work 1 day. And it sounds super fun, super excited, very happy about it, but I am the only one that knows all of my reasons why. Even Jolene doesn't know all the reasons why. And I can't even voice them, but internally, I have been trying to stop being a dentist since the second year
of dental school.
Since the third year. Since the third year of dental school. I came to Jolene and I said, I don't want to do this.
And I was like, okay, no problem.
What's
your backup plan? And he said, I don't have one. And I said, okay, well, until you get a backup plan, then let's just keep doing this one.
And so I just kept doing something that I hate, that I'm miserable at, and don't enjoy, but have worked doing it and doing it better and doing it with better thoughts and processing my emotions and changing my brain to a place where I can
keep going,
work as a dentist.
Right.
I can do that. That is an option. This isn't like a have to get out, I'm going to have a breakdown, this is the worst
thing. And that
was
a lot of work. So let's not diminish how much internal work that was for you.
Yes, that was even years.
Yeah, like ladies, this is exactly what all of you sometimes come to me with, and you say, I'm not even sure I want to stay married. Like, I hate this. It's so hard. It's so difficult. I just want to get out. And that's what our brain thinks, right? Our brain wants to change a circumstance, right? The circumstance of your marriage or your job, or whatever is going on, because that hard thing our brain thinks is the thing that's creating all of our internal drama. And it's not. It's the patterns that we're creating in our brain. So this is why when my ladies come to me or someone wants to work with me and they say, I don't even know if I want to stay in my relationship, I say, no problem. Let's clean up everything that's going on internally so that you can make that decision from a clean place, so that you can get to a place where you can keep going. And then you get to just make the decision, do I want to? Yes or no?
What's fascinating about that, and I'm just comparing to dentistry, it's not the same as your marriage. But in a way, I didn't even want to get to a clean place with dentistry.
Yes.
Because I didn't even want to have that option on the table.
You didn't even want to stay.
I don't want to
get to a clean place because then
I'm leaving.
Because what if I'm at a clean place and then I'm like, oh, it's not so bad.
I'll just stay.
It's like I hate it so much here. I don't want to get to a place where it wouldn't be a problem.
Yes.
Right? And that sounds so crazy, but that's exactly what our brains do.
And that's exactly what my brain wanted to do. But I knew with the experience of working through pornography addiction, working through depression, working through a number of things in my life, that if I didn't take the time to go through this process, it would come back to me in a different version.
Right. So even if you quit dentistry, got a different job, eventually you'd end up back in a similar
pattern. What do I do
state.
When I get to this emotional state with something and I have no outlet? Mm-hmm. It feels like there's no outlet, stuck. Like I'm stuck.
Yeah.
And I know what to do with that now. Right? I know what tools I can use in those situations to not stay in the same place.
Right.
So, much cleaner place. I still don't like what I do. And that's why I'm choosing also to be done.
Right.
Because I don't like what I do, and it's not something that I have to do. I'm not stuck in doing it, mostly because of my thoughts and my feelings.
Right.
Because I could have quit any time along this whole journey. It would have had the consequences to deal with. Those still stay there.
100%.
But there's never any true have-tos. When we get our brain locked into have-tos, then it becomes stuck. It becomes burdensome. It becomes hard. It becomes, our brain stops thinking of alternatives.
Solutions.
It just wants to stay where it's stuck.
Correct. And this happens with anything. It's like either I have to or I can't. Have-tos and can'ts. That's what keeps us stuck. And we'll use all kinds of logical reasons to keep us there. Logically, I can't because I have kids. I can't because I don't have the money. I have to because I have kids. I have to because I have a house. I have to because I have to put food on the table. Whatever is our have-tos. I have to do the dishes because nobody else will do them. Whatever our have-tos is or our can'ts, that's when we box ourselves into a stuck victim mentality. We become a victim to our chores, to our children, to our spouse, to our money situation, and that's when we feel powerless. And living yourself in a powerless place is what burns us out emotionally. Ladies, that's pretty much where all of you guys are living, right? Burnt out emotionally because you feel stuck, right? Because we're spinning our wheels trying to control things that we're also telling ourselves that we can't.
It also eliminates our choice.
100%.
We forget that we chose to get married to this person a long time ago. We forget that we chose to have children, and that we would choose to keep our children now.
Yes. It's not that you forget what you chose. You know what you chose. You forget that you're still choosing it. Ladies, every day you're with your husband, you still choose him. Every day you're with your kids, you choose your kids. You choose to stay there. Every day you don't walk out the door and move to wherever, the Bahamas. Like any day you don't do that is a day you are choosing to stay exactly where you are. And that is where I'm talking about, again, that humility and honesty that really is the key to moving forward, because most of us just want to tell our story that we would never choose this, that we wouldn't want this. And yet that's what we're doing. And every day you don't move past all the resentment and the bitterness and the betrayal and all that pain that you're keeping inside you is a day that you're choosing it. So I'll say that again. Every day, ladies, that you don't move past all that emotion inside of you, that negativity, the way that you were affected by your husband's pornography problem, is a day that you're choosing to stay in it.
And the solution is not to change your circumstance, because
Correct.
that's what our brain will first offer. Well,
Yes.
if it's my choice that I don't have to deal with these kids, then I'll just change the circumstance.
Right.
Then I'll get on that plane to Guatemala and go. But that's not going to change any of your results, right? That's really not going to bring the happiness and relief and this joy that you're hoping to get. And so it's actually working and becoming aware on those thoughts and those feelings internally in that state, and working from that space is then when you can get to a place where you can make the decision to quit your job.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. And the result is the result that you truly want.
Yeah.
Not from running away.
Right.
Not from running away from all those thoughts and feelings. Not from hiding from those. Not from trying to buffer and ignore and shove down and shove away and try to forget.
Right. So as I'm thinking about this, just for my ladies, like in comparison to what you were talking about, how you said, like, I didn't even want to get to a place where I was okay with staying in dentistry. It's the same thing as I don't want, a lot of times our brain resists healing emotionally because you don't even want to get to a place where you're okay, because then your brain thinks, well, does that mean that everything stays the same?
Then it means I have to stay.
Then I have to stay. That I'm okay with him watching porn. That everything just stays as it is. There are no consequences, etc. And none of that is true either, right? Choosing to move forward, choosing to do that internal work and clean that up so that you can make that decision isn't saying I'm okay with what is. You cannot be okay with what is. I was never okay with Rob watching porn. I was never okay with him being attracted to other women. I was never okay with any of those things. But that also didn't mean that I had to get out of it. It also didn't mean that I had to leave. I knew that I could. That was a fun conversation. That was like Rob's...
That woke me up.
It did wake Rob up a little bit. That's like a little bit of a tangent. But, and that was a big realization for me to realize, oh, I could go.
Right. But here's the thing, that's just another circumstance. I have to take the choice to think about that and apply.
But here's what happened. Rob decided he's done working.
And so Jolene, and no one else knows this, that I had to make that decision for myself.
Yeah.
And I'm the only one that knew where I was at and what feelings I had. And I knew internally, it just was a knowing that comes when you're clear and clean. The knowing that for me, it was a complete break. That doing a day or two or just a little bit here or there was leaving the decision unmade.
Right.
Was lingering in the same model and the same thoughts and the same patterns. It was lingering in the same choices that I had made that betrayed my own self.
Sure.
For who I was.
Sure.
And staying in that meant me continuing to put a pretend self of me ahead of who I was.
Yeah.
And so I knew that a complete irresponsible decision was what was in store.
Mm-hmm. And I have to give my sister credit for this phrase, irresponsibly awesome, because with Rob quitting and him coming home, like, this is a dream come true. And this is another thing, ladies, that I want you guys to think about. One of the things that will prevent you from moving forward is not giving yourself permission to have the life of your dreams. Okay? Rob coming home is my dream. I have always said that
like when we were first married.
Yeah. From when we were first married. One of the things I always say, what do I always say, Rob? I say, I did not marry you so that you could spend the majority of your time
with other people.
With other people. That's not why you got married to him. I want to be with him. I'm very selfish. And so I have always wanted him to come home. I've always thought that would be amazing. And I have had to increase my capacity to have my dream life, to allow him to come home. And is it scary? Yes, because now I am the sole financial breadwinner for our family. And that has not happened yet. And ladies, I will be quite frank. My business is amazing. I love all of my clients. And no, I do not make as much money as Rob did. So we are coming into a deficit. We are coming into a point where my business is not bringing in as much as he was bringing in for our family. So we're not totally 100% certain what this is going to look like. And so that's scary. And for me, it's brought up a ton of emotional stuff that I'm working through. And just this last week, I was just feeling so overwhelmed. My coach sent me an email and she was like, hey, it's time to renew for another 6 months. If you want to keep coaching, it'll be this much money. And immediately my brain just flooded with like, that is almost the amount that I have in my bank account. I can't spend this much money on a coach, even though I knew exactly that I would. It was like, I can't spend this on a coach because I have to buy groceries now. Like, that's my job. And this isn't just money I can invest in my business and have Rob be the one that buys groceries. And I just felt so heavy. And the next night I was just talking to Rob, and by talking, I mean crying at him and just feeling so overwhelmed. And I knew there was a root to it and I couldn't quite find it. And I told him that. I was like, there's something underneath here and I'm trying to look at it. And I just had to sit with it a little bit longer. So the next morning, I'm talking to Christy, my sister, and all of a sudden I had just processed enough that it came to me what the name of the emotion was that I was feeling. And I said, I feel so irresponsible. I feel like it's irresponsible for my husband to stop working, for us to try and just go all in on my business, for us to trust that my business is going to keep bringing this in, that there's all these women out there who are ready for this, who are ready to change, who are ready for this transformation. It feels irresponsible to trust all of that. And my sister was like, yeah, but Jolie, it is a little irresponsible. And what if that's totally awesome? She's like, you do irresponsible stuff all the time. And then I started naming all of these things that we've done that are so irresponsible, but irresponsibly awesome. I dyed my hair pink.
Really, really, really want to do it, and you do it, and it's just like amazing.
Amazing. You know, like I dyed my hair pink. That's
the trip,
a little irresponsibly awesome.
And you're like,
the trip, we went on a cruise 5 years ago to Greece.
We even went to Texas.
It was amazing, and it was irresponsibly awesome. We just drove 19 hours to go to the solar eclipse. We had 5 kids in 6 years. That was a little irresponsibly awesome. Like 5 kids really close together, really quickly, very young. We got engaged when I was 19. Irresponsibly awesome. We opened a museum right before the pandemic hit. I signed up for life coaching, ladies, and that was another example that I thought of earlier. Mm-hmm. This was an irresponsibly awesome decision. When I decided to sign up for life coaching, when I decided to become a life coach and go find all of you, this was a time in my life where it made no sense. Even the most supportive people in my life, including my twin sister, they were like, what are you doing? Your husband's a dentist. We had a children's museum at the time. We were just barely opening it. It hadn't even opened yet. And then I was flipping furniture. I used to do that. And I made quite a bit of money. I used to refinish furniture and sell it just like on Facebook. And it was so fun. And my sister and everyone was like, why are you going to life coach school? This makes no sense. Also, ladies, it was $18,000. Did we have $18,000, Rob?
We did not at the time.
We did not. Do we now?
We did not.
We did not, my ladies. We did not have $18,000. And I remember Rob was like, you need to go do this. He was the one that pushed for me to sign up. He said, you need to go do this. And I said, I don't know how to pay for this. And he was like, I'll find a credit card. He found a credit card. I don't even know how we made those payments because every single month that declined. And we figured out how to pay for it. And that was an irresponsibly awesome decision that I do not regret. So ladies, if there is something in your life that is calling to you and it feels a little irresponsible, what if it is? It's totally fine. What if we can just accept that it's a little irresponsible, but kind of irresponsibly awesome? And then I started flipping that around and thought, what's more irresponsible? Is it more irresponsible to do it or not to do it? Which one will you regret? Will you regret going for it, or will you regret not going for it?
Staying the same.
Will you regret staying the same? I just talked for a long time.
No, that's what I mean. Will you regret staying the same? And I would.
Yeah.
And that's why I made the decision. Mm-hmm. And because that's the choice, right? You think you're not making a choice, but the choice is to not grow. The choice is to not stay the same.
Yeah.
The choice is to not invest.
Correct.
In yourself.
Correct.
And that of course it's irresponsible. No financial planner is like, have you budgeted your therapy and your coaching into your life plan? Like when you graduate from college, you meet with the counselor, like, all right, make sure you set aside 3% every month for all that therapy.
Like you do with your taxes.
Yeah, it's like, no, it's not.
It's
but
a
when
decision.
you know, and it's a decision, and you know that for you personally is what the next step is for you, and when you know, you're like, yes,
this is it.
This is what I can tell. This is what's going to be the next step for me. I can tell this is how I'm going to grow. I can tell this is what I need in this moment to move forward, to make the change, to grow. And yes, it doesn't make any sense. In fact, it would be much more helpful if none of this had ever happened and someone else was paying for it and all those things. But at the end of the day, those are the decisions that create change.
Yeah.
That actually create growth. And it's 100%. Not until you commit to that decision. It's 100%. Not until I've commit, and I'll be honest, there's still a little like lingering part of me. I'm supposed to like submit some paperwork to my office that allows me to keep shadowing for them.
Oh,
like to be able to come in for subs.
Oh, substituting.
To substitute. Mm-hmm. There's that little part of me, and I still haven't made that decision.
Oh, of whether or not to do it.
Yeah, or whether or not to do it. And maybe it's a separate decision, but it's still like I know my decision,
Yes, it's just the following through.
It's just the following through with what you know.
100%. And it's hard to do, ladies, especially I talk to so many of you who I know so many of you struggle and think, well, I just don't know if or for example, if you want to join my coaching program, right? And you say, well, I want to, but we don't have the finances. Ladies, nobody's ever going to have the finances for this. Just like Rob said, this is a decision that you make and then you make happen. But also, the reason why it can be so difficult, the reason why you want your husband to be supportive, if that's one of the thoughts, is I want to, but my husband doesn't understand why I need it. He doesn't need to understand why you need it. You just
he
need.
He
may never, because he's not you.
You can explain every thought, every feeling.
He still won't get
it
it
all out, just like I explained to Jolene.
And I still didn't quite get it.
Didn't quite get the but do you really?
Yeah, but couldn't you just work one day a month, right?
Or do that insurance that pays for it, and
right?
Then couldn't we just do that?
Yes.
But then it's not going to work. That's not the answer, and what will help you because you are you.
Correct. And you're the only one that knows. So you have to back yourself up. Even if your husband doesn't understand. Even if it feels a little irresponsible to do it. If this is the thing that's calling to you, then let it be a little irresponsible. And instead of it just being that, it can be irresponsibly awesome. And I'll be honest, ladies, again, most of the time, the decisions that we make that are irresponsibly awesome aren't all that irresponsible. In fact, it's more irresponsible to do the reverse. Most of the time when we're looking at whether or not it's irresponsible, we look at two categories. One, if other people think that it's logically okay, and two, if it's financially makes sense. But that's really it. And there are many more categories to consider, many more factors to consider. Is it irresponsible to your family not to do it? Is it irresponsible to yourself not to do it? And those are the questions that I want you guys to consider and ask with whatever it is that you feel called to do.
When you say, as you say that, like the thought that keeps coming to my mind is how irresponsible it is to stay miserable in a marriage.
Yeah.
And then the consequences for that come.
Yeah.
Meaning you're still going to choose to stay, you're still in the marriage, but you're showing up miserable and then you're staying there, and that continues to create
Correct.
A miserable marriage.
Right. And
then the consequences
produces even more. It produces the resentment, it produces arguments, it produces attention, and then it teaches your children different things.
I know that's really strong there, but I know there's responsibility on all sorts of parties, but just that's the perspective.
Yeah. Absolutely. I mean, I'm even thinking of when you don't heal your own emotional turmoil, that's exactly what created all the consequences of your decisions, right? It created the pornography addiction, it created the attraction, it created so many other things, and those were all symptoms. And that's the same thing for you, ladies. Just because your symptoms aren't a pornography addiction doesn't mean they're not there. They come out in you yelling at your kids or avoiding your kids and just wanting to buffer and be on your phone. Or they come out in you arguing with your spouse or you hating your body or any number of things. And all of those are consequences of that inner emotional work that we aren't doing. If that makes sense. Does that make sense? Do you have any final thoughts? Words of wisdom?
You know, I was just saying, it's really easy at this point to just want to take all that responsibility we're talking about and the irresponsible decision and all that stuff, and yeah, it sucks that that's part of the decision process for you, you know, but like it's easy at this point to just throw it on your spouse and then put some blame somewhere else. Or maybe not maybe a husband, maybe it's someone else you blame. Like It's easy at this point to say, I just going to throw this blame on in other directions, rather than just saying, this is my part, and even though I don't have control of so many of the other parts, this is the part I can control, and I can control this, you know, in a positive way, you know, this is a choice I can make
100%.
For the betterment of myself and myself alone, if that's all
that comes from
it.
Yes. And that's, again, what is super scary. And that's the thing about something being irresponsibly awesome. It doesn't mean that it's not scary. We still have the fear. It's just whether or not you're allowing yourself to be in charge of the fear, or you're allowing the fear to be in charge of you and what you decide to do. It's still going to be scary, and that's okay. This is why I just did a consult call the other day and with a client, and she was talking about, I was telling her why this is the hardest step. The decision, as an example, the decision to join my program is the hardest step. And it takes so much mental shifting to do, and then everything else is so much easier. Healing, ladies, is so much easier in my program because I'm walking you through it. I teach you what to do. You're not doing it by yourself. And it's exactly the right steps. But deciding to do that, committing to it, like Rob was saying, and actually making it happen, that's the biggest mental shift, because you go from saying, this is everybody else's fault, this is my husband's fault, there's nothing I can do about this, I just have to suffer, to there's something I can do and I'm going to do it. That mental shift is so beautiful. It's so hard. It's the hardest shift to make, but once you make it, everything else changes, because you start seeing yourself differently, you start interacting with yourself differently, and you place yourself in a different priority in your own mind. And that's what enables you to move forward. That makes sense. All right. I love you, ladies. If you want to come join me this week, come join me. I'm teaching a Healing Resentment Masterclass. We'll work on all of this. Come join my coaching program. Rob, what do you think?
Yeah, I would agree.
You would agree?
Yeah. In fact, when the resentment course was offered, I considered signing up myself.
He did. He was like, oh my gosh, I need this.
Unfortunately,
he's going to be at work, but
I'll get the recording.
Yeah. But I would love to see you guys in my coaching program. I can help you with all of this. The hardest part, ladies, the reason why it feels so hard right now is because you're doing it on your own.
Yourself. Yeah.
Commit to yourself. You deserve this. It might feel irresponsible, but it could be irresponsibly awesome. I love you, ladies, and I'll see you guys next week. So take care.